Good day, everybody. Welcome to Kerapac, a bad PVM'er's guide. This is a very minimalist guide to learning Kerapac for anybody that is looking to get into this boss and having trouble with it. Just gonna say it right off the bat, my gear here is very minimal as far as what I consider to be minimal for having an okay time at Kerapac. I'm by no means a best-in-slot PVM'er or a very good PVM'er at all, hence the title of the video. But what I'm going to show you here is all of Kerapac's mechanics and the best ways that I found to deal with them, my recommendations, tricks, and as well as a brief overview of my gear. So let's start with that. What I'm using here under all the holiday cosmetics is a Nox bow with Araxite arrows, so bare minimum. There are now splintering arrows that I've found later are very effective at Kerapac, but for now, let's just say use Nox arrows as a bare minimum. My armor is tier 82 power armor for the body and legs, it's Elite Robin Hood, and I'm actually using Superior Death Lotus for the head, gloves, and boots. It's tier 88 tank armor from Ports. My inventory, you can see, is just a Overload, Excalibur, 2 Super Restores, and a bunch of shards. In this run here, I've already had 1 kill, and as you can see, not used up too much food. So, I'll show you how to do just that. Oh, I lied, actually, I'm using a pack yak this run, so I have totally used up food. I was actually recording this for another video I'm going to make, so I'm purposely not using any auras here or any Ripper Demon or any combat familiar like that, so this is really bare minimum just to show you that it can be done. And what you're seeing here is actually one of my better runs, but for walking you guys through the mechanics, I'm actually going to show you one of my most terrible runs with the Nox bow, just to show you a better example of what you can do if you mess up some of the mechanics. Because all of Kerapac's mechanics, well, namely this one that you're seeing now, the jumping slam, is extremely timing sensitive. And you can have bad luck with some of the other mechanics and end up taking a lot of damage. So I want to show you how to deal with those situations if you find yourself in them. You'll see it's not too terrible at all. One thing I'll note on equipment that is pretty critical is the Shadow Pontifex ring, if you don't have that already. Get that. You should have it if you're doing Kerapac, and you should upgrade it with 1000 Jazz Anima. At this point, that Anima is pretty cheap to buy off the Grand Exchange, so go ahead and do that because the primary effect of that ring, other than getting you access to tier 3 Elder Troves for loot, is that if you do get hit by his jumping slam attack that I'll explain in a bit, you won't get stunned. That's pretty important for not messing up your runs. And actually, in the terrible run that I'll show you, I forgot the Pontifex ring and just had my Luck the Dwarves because the Pontifex ring is not in my presets. So I forget that pretty often, actually. I'm also, towards the end of the video, going to walk you guys through a run with a mage setup, specifically using Animate, Dead, and Tank armor, since I found that to be really effective here for learning purposes. So, in short summary, the kills you'll get from the mage setup are going to be a lot slower, because just generally speaking, range works much better here, especially if you have the dual ascensions or whatnot. But mage kills will be slower, but with Animate Dead, you'll take a lot less damage. So for learning purposes, I'll show you how to do that too at the end. But for now, let's just jump straight into that terrible run I was talking about. Alright, so first and foremost, you're going to want to pray Protection from Magic, or Deflect Magic, rather. The entire fight except for one phase, because Kerapac only uses magic for his auto attacks, and they do hit pretty hard. You'll notice here I come in with a Death Swiftness right off the bat. His first mechanic is this lightning wall. Now, I'll explain that a little better. So, he slams down his staff and sends out a line of lightning where you're standing, and it comes from the edge of the arena all the way to Kerapac. If you're standing in that line, or even within 1 or 2 spaces of it, it'll hit you for about 400 or 500 damage every tick. The area of effect is deceptively large. You'll see in this run a little bit later that I underestimate it and get hit pretty hard by it. And here, actually, you can see I messed up a jumping slam. I'll explain that in a second, but for now, let me rewind actually to that lightning wall. The only thing you need to know is that when he says his little catchphrase, "I'll tear right through you," or the other one, use Anticipate. You have plenty of time to use Anticipate and get out of the way, otherwise you will get stunned and held there. If you do get stunned, you can also freedom out of it, or if your Anticipate is on cooldown for whatever reason, because his rotation got funny, you can also freedom out of this one. That's all you need to know. You get out of the way, and you're fine. He also doesn't attack you during that period, so if you want to flick on Soul Split for a few seconds, you can feel free to do that too. Now rewinding again, what you see here is his jumping slam. What's the only critical information here is that you need to surge or escape out of the way before he slams down on you. Otherwise, he will stun you if you don't have that Pontifex ring upgraded, and he will deal melee damage every tick. And you can see it here. Now, if you're stunned because you don't have the ring upgraded, you can freedom out of it and then move out of the way. It's that simple. Now, the trick with the jumping slams is easy, but you'll want to make sure you don't have a lot of ping. So make sure you're on a server that's close to where you're located geographically, and make sure you don't have a lot of lag, because lag is most of the reason why I messed this one up, other than just crazy anticipation. The trick is this, to dodge the jumping slam. You need to wait until his wings point upwards. So he jumps up in the air, he hangs out for a bit, and then his wings start to go upwards, like pointing straight up into the sky. At that point, you can use Surge and get out of the way, and you'll be fine. Also, if in case you're wondering about the cooldown of Surge, the cooldown gets reset, and of course the same goes for Escape. The cooldown gets reset if you do this successfully. That's how you will be able to do this and dodge this 3 times in a row. The tricky part about messing up is that if you do mess up the timing and you do get slammed, your Surge will not reset. So for the rest of the slams, you'll basically have to take the rest of them because your Surge won't cool down in time. And take the damage, take the stun if you get stunned, and then just eat your way out of it. So unpleasant, doable, but preferably just have patience. It's no more difficult than prayer flicking Jad or whatever. If anything, it's much, much easier actually. It does make things harder for the rest of the phases if you can't get them in a nice pattern with the jumping slams. I'll explain why. But first, let me cover the final actual mechanic you'll see from him, which is this Wall of Lightning. He'll always say, witness the power of the staff, slam it down, and then a Wall of Lightning will come from a random direction in the arena. This thing hits you for typeless damage. You cannot resonance it, you cannot devotion it. You kind of have to eat it. The best way to deal with it is to surge through. That way you might avoid damage, or at most get hit one time. And it does hit around 1800 damage every tick that you're in it. Otherwise, if your surge is on cooldown or whatnot, you do have to run through it and take about 1 or 2 hits at minimum. So that's his rotation. You can see here he starts in the beginning. And by the way, his entire rotation is 3 auto attacks and his next mechanic. So that Wall of Lightning, the jumping slams on the lightning wall. Confusing because there's 2 lightning attacks. But anyways, now he has 4 phases. You're seeing the second phase right here. Every phase is the same. It triggers once you get him down to 50,000 HP. The mechanics are the same. What is not the same is that he now, for each phase, has a copy of himself from the previous phase for each of his special mechanics. So what does that mean here? You saw with the lightning wall, you see with the jumping slam. He'll do the same mechanics, and he'll also repeat them at the same time with a copy of himself from the previous phase. So this is why I say getting him in a nice pattern with the jumping slam is important, and I just messed it up there again. I have to freedom out of it. Because if you... Spoiler alert, for the second phase, he has 1 copy of himself. For phase 3, he has 2 copies of himself from phase 1 and 2, right? So if he's all over the place with his jumping slams and even with that lightning line, it can get pretty tricky to dodge stuff. Now you'll see his Wall of Lightning also has 2 instances here. So if you don't have double surge, you pretty much have to surge through one and eat it through the other one, like I just did. If you have double surge, that's great. Bladed dive, even better to use on top of that. This is where that lightning wall in the later phases is where most of my food consumption comes up. And here we can see phase 3, I got stunned and I freedomed out of it, just so you can see how that works. But there were only 2 copies there, I believe. Yep, okay, now we start the 3rd phase. if you get your DPS good enough, you should be able to avoid him repeating all the phases. If your DPS is very good, you can avoid the lightning wall altogether, but if you're able to do that, you shouldn't be watching this guide in the first place. So case in point, here is, actually only 2 copies. So you can glitch the copies of himself during the phases. There should have been 2 copies of himself there. But if you catch him at 50,000 life points as he's doing one of his special mechanics or whatnot, you can't break it. So here's a better example with 3 copies of himself doing jumping slam. What I do, if you've noticed, is I try to begin his jumping slam standing in the same place. That way, you can pretty much always dodge it if you surge away in the same patterns, if that makes sense. You might also notice, let me rewind a bit actually to show you. You may also notice that I do flick to soul split while he's doing his jumping slams. This is because he's not attacking you directly, right, with his auto attacks while he's doing jumping slams. And if you have auto retaliate on with the Nox bow, you'll automatically start to attack him again. Be wary if you are using Ascensions or a weapon with a shorter range than a Nox bow, you'll have to click on him after he lands on the ground to initiate your attacking back. That can be tricky because he's only clickable for a short amount of time. It's actually one of the reasons I prefer the Nox bow over Ascensions for him. It just makes that part easier, but while he's jumping slamming you and you're auto attacking back, I typically deal about 40,000 damage, which means I soul split back 4,000 HP. It will make the fight a lot shorter if you manage to keep attacking him while he's doing the jumping slams and heal back a lot of health. That part is very important. So now we're close to phase 4. It triggers once he hits 50,000 life points again in phase 3, which we'll see right here. So he gets enraged. Don't worry, he does not have a real enrage mechanic, but what does happen is he starts just auto-attacking you with magic very hard. With protection from magic on, it still hits about 2,500 or more, and he attacks pretty quickly. He also adds this debuff onto himself, which I don't know the full details, but you can see the little icon there above him. After every one of his auto attacks, he gains more damage and accuracy, essentially. Now, you might notice I'm not taking any damage because I've timed my devotion well. Oh, there you go, my devotion ran out, so you can see what happens. And actually, aside from the lightning walls, this is also the bulk of where your food consumption will go for this kill if you're not fast enough. So there's one more very special mechanic that you can take advantage of if you're not familiar with it already, which is this time warp thing and this button that pops up in the bottom right of the screen. Let me explain that in more detail. And in the meantime, let me start this run over, but with my good run, so you can see that one too. And I'll actually start from right about where phase 2 begins, because that's where you see this mechanic. So this is called time warp. Basically, the idea of the phases for Kerapac is he has the needle, that artifact that lets him control time, so he basically rewinds time, says F you, and gets back to full health. The thing is, you can also take advantage of that via that time warp button. So what it does when you click it is it basically takes a snapshot of your everything, your health, adrenaline, position on the map here, as well as the cooldown of all your abilities. That part is very important. So you can watch other people's YouTube videos on this or whatnot and see a lot of tricks that you can do. There are ways you can use this to your advantage with ultimate abilities. There are a lot of things you can do with this because you can essentially kill the cooldown of all of your abilities while recovering your health, adrenaline, and whatnot. So the way it works is once you hit that time warp button, it takes that snapshot, and then 10 seconds later, it puts you back there. So you'll want to be careful with this to not do this right before he does that, wall of lightning or lightning line attack, because it might put you in a bad place. But I've found that there is one place in particular, and that is phase 4, where this is most handy to save yourself the most food and essentially get more than one run, one kill per run, rather. So let me skip ahead to phase 4 here, where he enters that. So what I do here when he enters this phase is get myself back to full health while he's doing this enragement thing, right? Take the snapshot, and then use Devotion as soon as it's available. If you're lazy like me, you have your bar on full revolution, so if you're a better PVM'er, you'll make sure you have Adrenaline for that. But the reason for that is that you'll have Devotion for 10 seconds to protect you from his very hard-hitting Phase 4 auto attacks, right? Before it runs out, that snapshot will kick you back to where Devotion does not have cooldown, and if you had enough Adrenaline before, you'll have enough Adrenaline again to use it. So it's a tricky way to get 2 Devotions, so 20 seconds of complete protection rather than 10, which is pretty important here, because otherwise you'll go through a lot of food. So just to summarize that part again, for Phase 4, heal to full health while he's enraging, take a snapshot, use Devotion, or rather use the Time Warp, I should say, not take a snapshot. Use the Time Warp, use Devotion. By the time your Devotion runs out, your Time Warp will bring you back, and then you can use Devotion again right away. So that's about it for the ranged guide, which is the best DPS, fastest kill way to do this. I'm also going to run you through my method with a magic setup, specifically for learning Kerapac. So the reason I say that is because my kills with this setup take about a minute longer. Let's say 30 seconds to a minute longer, depending on how much I mess up the mechanics or how unlucky I get with the Wall of Lightning. But if you have access to Animate Dead and good tank armor, in this case I have full Sea Singer, so elite Sea Singer weapons, tier 88, as well as superior Sea Singer armor, which is tier 88 armor. I worked very hard for my ports armor, so I'm going to use it. I don't even have magic power armor. Fight me. Anyways. The thing about Animate Dead, if you're not familiar with it, is that it, when you're wearing tank armor, especially full tank armor, you get a huge armor bonus, and you get a huge damage reduction. And the lower... Well, let me put it this way. The damage reduction of Animate Dead works best on lower damage. So, for example, in this run, you'll actually see a part, I think, where I get hit by his lightning line attack, and I don't even care. Because instead of hitting 400 or 500, it's hitting like 60 to 80 per tick, which is negligible. It's like 500 damage total. And here I'm actually using a Vampirism Aura, which I highly recommend for this setup. Effectively, guys, if you do this, you don't need to eat. At the end of this kill, I just ate my Rock Tails to make room for the drops. If you have a setup like this. So that's the entire reason. I mean, the rest of the run is the same, right? So keep in mind these are dual-wielded mage weapons, so the range is shorter. You'll notice throughout this run that I have to click him every time he comes down from a jumping slam when I want to auto-retaliate. That's the only difficulty. I'm very prone to misclicks, so I kind of hate that, and I prefer the Nox Bow. But if you have a staff, that also solves that problem, I think. Oh, here is entirely where I don't even care about his lightning line. As you can see, the hits are really negligible, so much so that I just vampirism them back. So this is a very good setup for learning Kerapac. All of his hits become much less punishing. So even the lightning walls, instead of doing 1800 per tick, they'll do like 1000 or 900. So you can get away with eating a lot less food, and honestly, the increase in kill time is not so bad. One thing I noticed is that with the range setup, I sometimes have to eat a lot more if I really eat it or mess up. Eat it. And that does kill your adrenaline and all that. So this is a good setup for learning. I would recommend, once you get familiar with those mechanics, switch back to range, because at this point, especially like I mentioned before, if you decide to use either Ascension Bows with proper bolts, Backromal, or the Nox Bow with Splintering Arrows. I just forget the name of those things. I've noticed Splintering Arrows reduce my kill times by about almost a full minute sometimes, at least 40 seconds or so. So those are actually a great investment. They don't cost that much to use for Kerapac. Well, that's it, guys. I hope this guide helped. I hope if you're trying to learn Kerapac without risking too much of a death cost, or if you're not that high budget of a player yet, just know that you can totally do this if I can. If I can do a boss, pretty much anybody can do a boss and learn one. So Kerapac is one of my favorite bosses. I think he's fun. He's about Araxor level difficulty, but I absolutely hate Araxi because there's way too many mechanics that Acid Spider always spawns on top of me and one-shots me. I have a really hard time with that fight, and I actually just hate it and don't have any fun with it. Kerapac to me is similar difficulty, similar loot, if not better. On average, his kills are worth, I'd say, 5 to 600k, which is pretty great once you get your kills to... I mean, I have my kills at about 4 minutes with my optimal setup, the Ripper Demon and whatever, everything else. There are many players that have it faster than that, but it's quite good to me. And the mechanics are such that you can get bad RNG, right, or you can get unlucky, but it's not a total killer. He doesn't have any crazy one-shot mechanics. He doesn't have any like thing that'll take off half your health. At most, you mess up, you eat a little bit more, and you bank sooner. But I think he's a lot of fun, and I hope you do too after this video. So if you guys want to see more content like this, please like, please subscribe. My channel is very new, so I could definitely use the help there. And I appreciate whoever watched all the way through. So thank you and catch you in the next one.